Well, hello there, and welcome back to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we'll be looking at the M10, American Tank Destroyer, Rank 2, 3.3 battle rating. Now, as with all reviews, the parts of this review are going to be timestamped down below, so feel free to click off to wherever you want to watch if you don't want to listen to the garage portion or you just want to hear the opinion. All that's timestamped. Feel free to go off and watch whichever part you want to. But if you want to hear the garage portion, let's get started. So the M10 is, if you think of it in terms of number produced, the most important American tank destroyer of the Second World War. More of these things were produced than any other tank destroyer in American service during the time. Approximately 6,706 of these machines were produced, and they were given to the British in addition to American forces. And the term Wolverine was the nickname given to this tank by the British. Americans never really caught on with American troops, and it just remained the M10. But what are you getting with the M10? Now, the M10 continues along the line of American thinking during World War II in terms of tanks and tank destroyers. Tanks, you think about the Sherman, the M4 Sherman. That's a tank. It's designed to support infantry and exploit breakthroughs, much like cavalry. You can think of tanks as cavalry. And their goal, tanks weren't necessarily used to create the breakthroughs as other nations used. They were used to exploit them once the infantry were able to open a hole in the enemy line. Now, the Sherman wasn't really designed to fight other tanks. It was designed to just go forward and exploit the breakthrough, like I said. But it had some type of tank fighting capability because it's inevitably going to run into enemy tanks. And at the time, it was perfectly adequate to deal with Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs, things like that. Well, with the amount of German armor that was, at the disposal of the German war machine, it became clear that tank destroyers were needed to deal with enemy armor. So these are designed to hunt down and destroy enemy armor. They're not really designed to exploit breaks in the line, and they're more so a reactionary force to go out, find enemy tanks, and destroy them. And that's kind of what the M10 fits into. It's more of a pack hunter. It's a squad of these or a platoon of these are designed to run out and into an area where German armor is known to be and destroy them. And usually these would operate with infantry support because there's a few flaws with, sending a bunch of M10s out there. For one, it's open top, and there's plenty of stories of entire crews being killed because, mortar fragments above them and kills the turret crew, or a shell explodes above them, kills the crew, whatever. Machine gun fire. Open top vehicles are incredibly vulnerable to infantry. So the M10 really needed infantry support to help keep it safe from like grenades and just people running up to it and spraying everybody inside just by climbing on the side of the tank. Another factor was its turret traverse isn't that fast. But a lot of this was designed this way because the M10 was designed to seek out and destroy. Now, a completely enclosed turret gives less visibility to the crew inside. They have to use viewports and things like that, and that reduces your overall visibility. The open roof concept is now you can have multiple sets of eyes poking out above the lip of the roof and attempting to spot enemies. This puts more eyes with greater field of vision on the tank. Well, tank destroyer. And it allows you to locate and engage targets more effectively. Right? So that's the idea behind that's why you'll see almost every American tank destroyer, aside from the super heavy assaults like the T-95 and the T-28, have an open turret, because their job is to search for enemy tanks, and they can't do that if it's an enclosed turret. Things like Shermans have closed turrets because they're designed to fight, infantry and fortifications and just general breakthrough, and it's very likely that they could advance and not have the necessary support to deal with enemy infantry. So they need to have closed turrets so that they can be protected from things like grenades and things like, just small arms fire. These aren't designed to do that. American tank destroyers are designed to destroy tanks. So more eyes looking around, the better chances you have of finding them and destroying them. So let's pull out the stats. Like I said, it's a 3.3 battle rating, rank 2 tank destroyer. It weighs 29.6 tons, 410 horsepower at 2,900 RPM. Pretty grunny engine, 49 km/h top speed. I haven't seen it get that high. I bet you can do it downhill. Generally, this thing is not slow. In a straight line, it's very quick. And it turns at high engine RPM, it turns fairly well. At low engine RPM, or when you're stationary, you can turn pretty well. There's a middle bit in there where it's kind of struggles, but that's because the gears are changing and things like that. It's just weird. But overall, it's a decently maneuverable tank. It's not anywhere. It's not like Hellcat status, or it's not M18 status. This thing can move, but it's not bad. It's certainly just as good as a Sherman or a insert name of competing tank here, a T-34, a Panzer IV, Panzer III. It's just as good. Now, maximum inclination 41 degrees. That means something now, because a lot of the new maps have increased elevation and rougher terrain. So I've seen plenty of times when vehicles with lesser maximum inclination can't climb slopes, but heavy tracked vehicles like the M10 can. The big flaw of this machine, though, is the turret rotation speed. 4.5 degrees a second. It's pretty bad. It's really bad. It's not good, but you can make it work. The thing is that a lot of times I find myself just turning the entire tank anyway. It's not that the turret rotation is crippling, but it really, really hurts when you have multiple enemies to deal with. You basically have to commit to killing one, whereas with other tanks, my usual strategy is to try and, okay, I'm going to hit you and disable you, and then shoot you, disable you, or kill you, and then come back and kill you. Basically, you make it so neither of them can shoot at you, and it's a fairly easy thing to do in War Thunder. It's difficult to do that with the M10 because of how slow the turret is. And especially when you're coming around corners and things like that, you really have to think about, where does my gun need to be pointing, because it's entirely likely that they'll get the first shot even if you are pre-aimed, just because you have to move your turret. So something to keep in mind. Vertical guidance, gun depression is 10 degrees, gun elevation is 30 degrees. That's partly due to the fact that the roof of this tank is open. So the breech has plenty of space to move up and down, and that's nice. The 30 degrees of elevation doesn't mean a whole lot, but 10 degrees of gun depression, pretty good. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. Now, the armor is decent. It's not bad. So we flash up the armor here, and we'll talk about the front plate first. Let me just line it up here. That's perfect, right there. So we'll start with the lower plate. The lower plate is 50.8 millimeters thick. It's essentially, on the seam, it's basically that, but once you move off the seam, it's 72.5, 75. This is all basically 72 to 75 millimeters in here. Just pretty solid for, 3.3 battle rating. The upper plate is 38.1 millimeters thick, which, that's pretty thin, but it is sloped back at 55 degrees. So all this armor is basically 58 to 62 millimeters of armor, which isn't bad. That's not going to save you from like a Panzer IV F2, but against the lower velocity Panzer IVs and some of the Panzer IIIs, that's good enough. That'll get the job done. Front of the turret, the gun mantle is 57.15 millimeters, or on the seam, exactly that. But once you move off this seam here, 80 millimeters, working its way all the way up to almost 100, well, over 100 millimeters. Same way on the way down and to the sides. So this gun mantle is actually really, really tough. And you can't really shoot there's a spot you can shoot on the cheeks of this tank right here. Right, that's 25.4 millimeters of armor, but thanks to sloping, it's 50.9. That's doable, but I don't know. It's a very tough shot. And obviously the sides of the turret are heavily, heavily angled, so they're no pen zones, basically. Now, that's the tank from the front. From the side, this is 19.05 millimeters. And it's sloped back, so it's like 23, but It doesn't really mean anything. The lower part of the chassis is 25.4. It's, you know, basically that. And, it's not good. 25.4 on the turret. Move around to the back, 19.05, 25.4. You get the picture. The side armor isn't great. But that sticks with American design philosophy, where the front of, if you're being attacked from the sides, you're probably toast anyway. You want to be engaging from the front, so having the most armor on the front is important, and cutting armor off the sides, because you don't expect to get shot there, increases the speed and gives your means you can put a less powerful engine in and achieve more speed and grunt. So it follows classic American design philosophy of just not having a ton of armor on the back part of the tank. So that's the armor. From the front, it's pretty good. You can get away with angling this a little bit. See, 38.1, this is now 64, so, you know, and it works its way all the way to about 75. This becomes about 58, which is fine, but I don't know. A lot of times you don't need to angle. Extreme angling is best, because this is just so thin that it's just, this is angling, it can help. I'll just say that, it can help, but I don't find myself doing it that much, because a lot of times there's like a certain break point where if they can penetrate this plate frontally like this, they can probably penetrate it like this. Right, now there are some situations where you'll get saved, but I don't know. It's probably worth it. It's probably worth it to try, but don't be. It's not necessarily going to save you, I guess, is my point. So that's the armor. Let's talk about the gun. The gun is the 76mm M7 cannon, which is a very nice gun. 54 rounds of ammunition, and we'll flash up the ammunition here. Now, this is the standard shell you have when you first unlock this tank. It's an armor-piercing capped ballistic cap shell. All right. Notice the damaging effect. It's an explosive damaging effect, which is really nice. 792 meters per second muzzle velocity. That's pretty good. And at a 0-degree angle of attack, at 10 meters, you'll have 127 millimeters of pen, 116 at 500 meters, 97 at 1500, and 89 at 2000. So I'm not really going to discuss the other angles of attack, because honestly I don't have enough information to tell you if that's good or bad. You should note that 30 degrees you still have plenty of penetration. All right, but once you get to a 60-degree angle of attack, penetration's falling off really hard. But that's kind of something we already knew, right? If you're attacking something at 60 degrees, it's very likely the shell's going to bounce or do nothing at all. So, I mean, those two are kind of the same thing, I guess, aren't they? So at 0 angle of attack, your penetration is great. That's that's great for a 3.3 battle rating. This really is an anti-tank shell. 30 degree angle of attack, it's still really, really good. 81 millimeters at 2,000 meters. You can penetrate anything this tank sees in excess of 2,000 meters. That's great. I mean, 60-degree angle of attack, you're just hoping it penetrates at that point. You know, if you're having to shoot someone at any kind of distance and you have to hit their surface at 60 degrees, find a new position. Get out of there. Flank. Do something else, because you're not going to be doing it right if you're doing that. All right. So this is the standard shell, and it's a very, very powerful shell. Next, you have this HE shell, which I've used a little bit, but I don't find it tremendously effective. But mainly because it's just, I mean, it only is 7 millimeters of penetration. The side of a Panzer IIc can actually withstand these HE shells. You have to hit them in the right spot and do things like that. So I generally don't use it very often, but I really have only played this thing in realistic battles, so I haven't run into many unturreted tanks. Or not unturreted, open-top tanks. If you're playing this in arcade and you run into another M10, it may not be a bad idea to fire HE at it and try and kill the crew that way. So something to keep in mind. But my general loadout has 44. You have 54 total shells. My general loadout has 54 M62 shells, and then 10 M79 shells. Now the M79 shot, I don't think is the only. The difference between it is the damaging effect and the penetration. You basically give up the explosive damaging effect and a little bit of, I believe actually the muzzle velocity is actually the same. Yeah, it is. That's what I thought. You give up the damage effect, but you gain penetration. At a 0 angle of attack at 10 meters, you have 155 millimeters penetration, 131 at 500, 88 at 1500, and 72 at 2000. You will note that the penetration actually is greater at close range, but it falls off much more drastically at long range. And this was something that kind of factored into my deciding what shells to use. Now, the M79 shot, I can tell you I've fired maybe, I think I fired one of them, if any. I think I fired one. And I don't remember why I did. I think I just did it to try. I was experimenting. I fired one and then said, nope, okay, we're going to go back to the M62 shot. Now, the reason why I think this is a way better shot, the damaging effect means a lot. Because the front of most tanks is going to be enough to set off the charge and cause the shell to explode and do lots of damage. 127 millimeters penetration at 10 meters is plenty for what this tank sees. It's more than enough. It's great, right? It's very, very good penetration on an explosive armor-piercing shell. You don't need 155 millimeters penetration. And if anything, let's go out all the way out to 2,000 meters. 72 millimeters of penetration gets the job done. The AP shell has more, has 89. So this shell really isn't, it's less useful than the M62 shell at long range and has a worse damaging effect. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this one. Now, if this thing gets up battle rating or up tiered until a point where 127 millimeters penetration isn't always going to get the job done, then I'll probably consider using this more. But I don't think there's a reasonable expectation that this thing's going to get tiered up that high. So M62 shot is kind of what you want. It's a great shell, and it's going to really bring the punch. And that's what you want. Right? The M79 shot it doesn't do anything different, and it does the things that the M62 shot does already, it does worse. So just the M62 shot is the way to go. Alright. Rate of fire, I've got my reload at 6.2 seconds. That's pretty respectable. That's pretty good. It's a quick rate of fire, and you can certainly keep up with the best of them. You also have a 50 caliber machine gun, which is great for dealing with AAA trucks, and generally the side of German tanks at this tier. Russian tanks have too much armor, but the side of German tanks, you can actually kill them with 50 cal, and it's nice. 50 cal is also a very good harassing tool. Now let's look at the layout. So when you open up the layout, you'll notice it's pretty classic sort of American design. The driver's sitting here, you got the machine gunner for some reason. He should be, I guess, be manning this here, but we'll leave him there. You have commander, you have the loader, and you have the gunner next to the gun. You will notice there is ammo in the back of the turret here, which I imagine you can take out if you ditch a few shells, but I haven't really experimented with that. In the front portion of this tank, you have the radio station, you have some observation ports, and you have ammo along the side below the turret. So if you got the side of this thing, shooting it almost right in between here is not a bad idea, or just shooting either one of these. Basically anywhere under the turret, and you'll hit ammo and cause some serious problems. You'll probably kill the crew, and that's never good for any tank. Back of the tank, fuel tank, engine, transmission is front mounted, and you have the radiator sitting in the back. So it's a pretty typical tank design layout. A little weird that the shells are in the back of the turret like this, but whatever. Kind of what you expect. So I guess as an overview, what are you getting when you get the M10? Well, you're getting a tank with pretty decent frontal armor. Now, you are going to run into things that are going to have no problem with it, like Panzer IV F2s, Panzer III Ls specifically. But your gun is very powerful and has plenty to deal with those guys at any range. And maybe with a little angling, maybe with some help from the terrain, you can conceivably bounce some of their shots. A lot of tanks that are at your tier or slightly below may struggle to get through your gun mantlet. And using that is sometimes pretty critical. The tank's pretty quick. It follows classic American design when it comes to tanks, is that we're going to focus the armor on the front, strip armor out of the sides and rear, because if we get shot there, we're toast, and be an aggressive flanking machine and search out the enemy. And all in all, it works pretty well. But let's move on to the replays and see for ourselves, shall we? So here we are in a realistic battle on Kuban. And this is obviously the 1.70.1945 update, since that's what it's called, I guess. And Kuban has had a little bit of a makeover, not a huge one, but there are some new features, some new changes, and makes the map play the exact same, I feel. The changes really, I don't think they made a tremendous amount of difference, but then again, I believe I've only played this game and one other on Kuban since the patch. So, can't confirm or deny that the changes really matter. But I'm running over here in my M10, and it looks like what's happening is that our team is going to very aggressively take B and C, and then A we're just going to converge on. And we're just getting over here, and oop, that's a T-50 who's running across the middle of the thing there. It looks like he was trying to get over here and get under our guns and cause us some problems. But he's not going to get a chance to. The M10 has a pretty good rate of fire, and it's more than enough to deal with the front of a T-50. So he's toast. Now, next part, I don't really want to move forward because I know there's going to be more tanks coming our way. You see, I can see that muzzle flash and the smoke, so I know there's an enemy there. All right, and I want to move forward to try and get a better look on him, but very soon I'm going to notice a couple things. One, there's Pans 2C, he's already dead. But I'm also going to notice, bam, right there, that tracer coming from the top of the hill there. Now that tells me that there's an enemy tank there. And he just knocked out one of my friends, so we're going to have a go on him. Trying to just get the gun turned onto him. Turret rotation is not good on this tank. It's if the turret rotated at regular Sherman or just regular Sherman traverse, like 20 degrees a second, this tank would be really, 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 really powerful. It's a very good tank right now, but if it had a faster turret, it would be insanely strong. But now, I'm repairing my horizontal, and definitely going to need that thing repaired. And now I'm deciding to push more so over there, and bam, nice little hit onto him. I want to push up across and go onto the other side of that ridge, because that's where the majority of their team's going to be. So I'm putting the relative speed of this tank to use. And kind of the key with this tank is being able to predict where your turret needs to be facing. And it's a lot, I mean, because the turret rotation, it is bad. It's not crippling because of other features of the tank, like the decent lateral shift, you know, being able to turn fairly well. The grunt in the engine helps out with that. But you do need to having your turret facing the right way. Because if you don't, you're going to come into situations where you just can't do anything. This T-50 here, he was already knocked out, but just to make sure. Now, I am back on the ridge here, and I fully expect everyone I'm going to face to be in front of me. Oh, he got one right there. A 1942. And I'm going to spot another guy, there he is, moving amongst those ridges there. And I'm trying to decide how to attack him. I mean, I feel that I have the advantage. I feel my gun is certainly better. But I want to be a little sneaky about this. I want him to come around the side of that ledge there, so I can just pop him in the side. But he's not going to. That's clever. Oh, I see the top of his tank. Confirms me it's a 3F, which I feel very good about engaging. He can kill me, but it's going to be tough for him, especially if I can swing my tank around over here. He wasn't immediately looking at me, so I get the next shot, and that's going to be enough. Just winding the gun around one more time. There we go. All done. So part of the strength of the M10 is that and part of the strength of a lot of American tank destroyers in general. I mean, by the way, this is a very early game in this tank. I don't actually have fire extinguisher yet. But we're going to make this ZIS-30 pay for setting my engines on fire. What a dick. Yeah, and I'm just going to burn out, but he's dead. Whatever. A real strength of American tank destroyers is that even though they're all open top, which is a weakness, they're all pretty maneuverable, pretty quick, and they have very effective guns. So that's a pretty potent combination. Armor, there's not a lot to say for the armor, but all in all, the turret rotation, the Wolverine's the only real issue with turret rotation. You move up to the Hellcat, it's like 20.4 degrees, which is Sherman level, and Sherman has pretty good turret rotation. So let's move on to the next replay, shall we? So here we are in a realistic battle on Karelia. I had to think of the name of this map for a second. And so I will, just a brief aside, I do like that the new maps have actually come up a few times for me in the rotation. This is the only time well, no, it's like the second time I've played Karelia since the new patch. The first time was the video I uploaded, I guess yesterday? 2 days ago? I don't know. I don't know when this will be going out. It depends when I finish it, I guess. But this is only the second game I've played on Karelia. Most of the other games have actually been on new maps, and that's refreshing. I like that. But we're coming down the cliff here. I was hoping to try and get some shots into enemies pushing in onto A and using that road in the middle of the map to get there. They weren't going to be there by now. But I was thinking, maybe if there's a quick, maybe T-50 or something like that, I could probably pick him off. But I'm using my binoculars to kind of poke over, get a look around, because a lot of times I prefer to use the scope, because if I spot something, I can immediately engage it. In a tank with slow turret traverse, it's a much better idea to use the binoculars, because the binoculars you can swing around really fast. Turret, you can't. So it's a much better idea. We're gonna... Oh, that's an enemy. Nope, nope. Turn left. There he is. Shoot him! And the 50 cal on top helps when dealing with other open-topped vehicles. That guy had zero chance once I had my front presented to him and the machine gun started firing. But we're going to keep pushing forward. The enemy's capping A, but we have a substantial number of tanks heading up to fight him. So I feel pretty good about that. I can, however, try and support... I'm trying to see if I can't sneak a shot in there. And, oop, there's a muzzle flash. So I know that's an enemy. Being aware of where the enemy muzzle flash are. See, there's another one right up there. I know that looks to be a Stug. Initial perception was it was a Stug, and I believe I'm right. And this guy makes a dart right at the most inopportune moment for me. I don't get much of him. And then the Stug is starting to sneak away. Put a shot into the top of his tank, but not much doing there. Was hoping he would come back around, but I need to push forward, be aggressive. I'm in an American tank destroyer. I'm supposed to be aggressive. Because the American tank destroyers, like I said in the previous replay, they're all pretty quick, they have good, powerful guns, and they generally do well when they're being aggressive and taking the fight to the enemy. A lot of the German tanks have more of a defensive role. There aren't many like super aggressive German tanks. Most German tanks are designed to be defensive or engage targets at range or engage from favorable positions. Well, the Wolverine, the Hellcat, they're designed to go forward, flank, get into advanced positions, and work as a team to just overwhelm. And that's kind of what I've seen in just in terms of gameplay. A lot of times, the American team divides into a clump, like a lemming train, that just annihilates whatever side of the map they go to. And they just butcher, because they just move so quick. And the German tanks really don't have German tanks certainly don't have the armor to deal with the American guns, and they have the guns to deal with the American armor. But there's just so many Americans coming at them all at once, and moving quickly and getting into positions that prior to this patch you wouldn't expect an enemy tank. So it's throwing German tank drivers for a whirl, that's for sure. And it's interesting because it's just plain. It's sort of, you'd think that the American and the Russian tanks would be the best matchup, but I don't know. T-34s angled can deal with American tanks pretty well. Oh, speak of the devil, there's T-34. But it's almost like if you let the American tanks get that close to you, to the point where a T-34 and would want to engage, because T-34, yeah, you can angle, but the gun doesn't have tremendous penetration, and the American gun is going to outrange the T-34, so you want to get in a little closer, I feel. But at closer ranges, it's almost like if you let some of these American tank destroyers get close, like a Hellcat, you're just done. You know, if the M18 gets close to you, you're toast. You know, if a Wolverine gets close to you, I mean, it's less so because the turret turns so slow, but you're not going to be feeling good from that engagement, especially not with the way sort of American tanks have been played, is to be in a group. I mean, you're going to see that a little bit in this replay. This certainly wasn't as pronounced as some other games I have, that where it's literally me and 3 other tanks just rolling over a flank, flipping it over, and then just killing the rest of the team from there. I think most of the games I played in the Wolverine were, most of them were done in maybe less than 7 minutes, you know, which for a solid game of War Thunder, I almost call this World of Tanks, it's definitely not World of Tanks. For a solid game of War Thunder, a good game usually lasts about 10, 11 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. But that's just not the case when you play some of these American tank destroyers. The game gets over really fast, because it's just domination. You know, it never feels like the game is close. You know, this game was maybe closer than it felt, but it just really wasn't. You know, we lost a few more tanks in this one, but there was never a point in this game where, you know, the team I was on was going to lose. And part of what I think the American tank effectiveness is that, you know, the speed is nice, but the ammunition. You'll notice on the a lot of the American tanks, to have effective penetration, you have to use non-AP explosive rounds. Well, as far as I can tell, just about all the American tanks get AP rounds, or the AP high explosive rounds that are pretty good. Good penetration, good muzzle velocity, maybe not great muzzle velocity, but pretty good. And they just dominate, they just wreck. I mean, this gun can penetrate everything it sees pretty effectively. You know, KV-1's no problem, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, it's just rough for the enemy team right now for a variety of reasons when you're facing an American team. And I imagine this will come eventually. We'll see a few of these tanks upped, their battle rating upped. I could definitely see the Wolverine making it to 3.7 at least. And I mean, I haven't played the Hellcat a tremendous amount yet, so I can't really speak on that one. But I don't know, maybe 5.0 for it. I don't feel like you can go tremendously higher than that. All these tanks do have the weakness that they're open top, and that means machine gun fire, AA fire, high explosive shells. Those will be an issue for these tanks because the explosions are going to kill crew, especially in the turret area where a lot of times that's where you're trying to kill crew. In my Wolverine, I've been knocked out by AAA because a shell hit the backside of my turret, like the inside back lip of the turret, and exploded. It was an armor-piercing explosive shell, I guess. Or it was just some type of explosive shell. Exploded, killed my crew. It just sprayed everybody in the turret. And I'd already taken some damage, so, you know, that was it for me. There's been other times when I've been HE'd by, I forgot what it was. It was not a particularly heavy caliber gun. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was a Panzer IV. I got HE'd in the turret, and that knocked me out. Now, I'm not sure exactly how it worked. I don't remember the kill cam specifically, but HE and machine gun fire usually cause American tank destroyers problems, you know, just because of their open tops. But where we stand in the battle, the enemy managed to sneak around and capture A. We're pulling our own aggressive sneak moves, and myself, another Wolverine, and a M4, I believe, are going to push back up. Yeah, it's an M4. Are going to push back into the cap. There's already someone else here, and I believe the person who capped it has just been knocked out. Now at this point, you have a decision to make. I'm going to decide to go right, because I don't think I'll be able to get... He's going to spawn. I'm pretty sure he's going to spawn again, or at least the time I was like, okay, if he spawns again, where do I need to be to potentially shoot him? So I want to get another kill. And he did spawn again. Where do I need to be? And right here I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, no, I'm already coming this way. I really need to keep going. If he spawns in the eastern spawn point, I have a decent shot of getting to him and maybe trying to kill him, because I'll be able to shoot across the gap, and he's going to have to make a beeline for the cap if he wants to win. If he wants to survive, well, he can just hide in his cap and we won't be able to find him. And if he spawns in the other cap, there's other people looking at that, and I'm certainly not going to get back there in time to scrounge another kill. So this is really the only option for me. So I'm just motoring my way along over here. You can see some very nice mud on the side of my tank. That was a very sneaky, very nice addition. Well, it wasn't sneaky because we knew it was happening, but it sneakily adds a lot to the game. Seeing your tank like covered in mud, getting mud washed off when you run through a river or whatever, it kind of adds something else to the game. You know, I don't like seeing my tank like pristine after I've driven it around the battlefield a bunch. I like seeing it with mud caked on and all that stuff. It's cool. But we're about to win by cap anyway. And that enemy, I believe where he actually spawned in the other spawn. He didn't actually spawn here, but I mean, he's going to die. I think he's going to die. Is he going to die? I think we're just going to win. Oh no, he died. Right before the game ended. But the M10 really works well in a group. It works well by itself. It's plenty powerful enough to take out its competition. And the gun is really, really powerful. The only thing you got to watch out for is that turret rotation. The speed is an issue. Anything like that, it's not an issue. It's purely the turret rotation, in my opinion. And it being open top. Open top certainly doesn't help. Well, let's move on to the final opinion, shall we? Alright, so final opinion time. What do I think of the M10? Well, I think the M10 is a really, really good tank. I certainly see it being upped in the future, giving a higher battle rating. I would predict about 3.7. I don't think moving it past 3.7 benefits anybody. And 3.7 is, to me, feels about right. You know, to me, this tank and the M4 Sherman are kind of the peas in a pod. They're very similar. I mean, the M10 is based off an M4 Sherman's chassis. So, you know, we might as well keep them together. And they're very similar machines. I think part of what makes the M10 really good is the fact that it has a turret with a very powerful anti-tank gun. Most other nations, actually, I mean both other nations, Russia and Germany, don't really have turreted tank destroyers. It's not really a thing. Whereas the Americans have mainly turreted tank destroyers. Turreted tank destroyers are kind of the main design philosophy. So, all in all, this tank is very potent at a 3.3 battle rating. And I fully expect it to be raised. A little bit. 3.7-ish. But when you're playing this tank, sticking with teammates is not a bad idea. Your turret doesn't turn very fast, so being alone, if someone sneaks up on you, you're pretty much toast, because they're going to be able to, most tanks in the game are going to outrun your turret traverse. So you don't want to be caught alone and just cut to pieces by like a T-50. Because you can certainly deal with a T-50 if he's in front of you. He's just never going to give you the chance if he sneaks up on you. It's basically, the M10 to me is a better gun on a less reactive Sherman chassis. Because, you know, the Sherman's turret traverse is about 20 degrees a second-ish. This one's about 4.5. So, you know, there's some downsides there. But all in all, it's a quick, it's reasonably maneuverable, powerful gun, decent armor. It's not much else you could ask for, really. You can't have all three. You know, if you have powerful armor, you're not going to be that quick. If you have a powerful gun, you got to draw a line somewhere. Guns weigh something. It's difficult to put a powerful gun on a heavy tank that's very maneuverable. You give up one of those regardless. If you want to be maneuverable, it's got to be light. You know, and 30 tons, that seems about right for a tank. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope it helps. Hope you learned something. I hope even if you're just watching this because you don't care about this machine, you just want to know how to kill these things, I hope helped you out with that too. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop them in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to read them, answer questions, laugh at funny jokes, whatever the case may be. But anyways, I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.